Hello chess lovers, I have a very interesting game for you played by Fabiano, Caruana and Daniel Naroditsky. The game was played in 2017 at US Championship in round 8. Caruana started with e4 and his opponent went for French defense e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, and the game is transformed into a Winawer variation, a very sharp variation. B takes c3, queen a5, bishop d2, queen a4. Black is putting pressure on this c2 square, queen g4 attacking the pawn on g7, king f8. Well, it's quite possible also to play g6, but the thing is that by playing g6, black is weakening the dark squares. That's why black played king f8. Here comes knight f3, paying no attention that the pawn on c2 is hanging. Of course, sometimes white is also playing rook a2 in order to protect the pawn on c2. Here comes knight f3 and b6. As we see, black didn't capture on c2. Well, what will happen if you take on c2? Rook c1, queen e4 check, queen takes e4, d takes e4, knight g5, knight e7, bishop e3, and black is losing the pawn on e4, giving back the pawn. But the thing is that this line favors white. That's why Naroditsky went for b6, decided not to exchange the queens. Here comes a strong move by Caruana, c4, intensifying the tension in the center of the board, and knight e7. Well, let's have a look what will happen if you take on c4. Here comes d takes c5. If b takes c5, then queen e4, attacking the rook on a8. If queen c6, then queen takes c6, knight takes c6, bishop takes c4, knight e7, bishop e3. Well, definitely black will lose the pawn on c5, and after taking on c5, this diagonal will be controlled by white by all means, and this will be of course great for white. But let's go back. Instead of playing knight e7, what if you take on d4? Then white can play bishop b4 check, knight e7, c takes d5. Well, you can't take on d5 because your bishop on c8 is hanging, and there are also so many threats. White can take on e7 and then take on g7. This is of course good for white. That's why we see this knight e7 move. Here comes bishop d3, and now d takes c4, d takes c5, b takes c5. Well, you can't take on c3 because your queen on a4 is hanging. Here comes b takes c5, and now comes knight g5, attacking the pawn on h7, h6, knight h7 check, rook takes h7. The thing is that this is the only best move in this position. If king e8, then simply white is taking on g7, and this is winning for white. And if king g8, then bishop h6 is very strong. Knight g6, bishop takes g6, f takes g6, knight f6 check. Well, if you take on f6, then this is a checkmate. And if king f7, then queen f3, g takes h6, knight d5 check, king e8, knight c7 check. Suddenly black's position just collapses, white can easily win. But let's go back to the game. Here comes rook takes h7, bishop takes h7, bishop b7, castling, knight c6, rook b1, bishop a6, bishop e3, queen a5, rook fd1. Look at these rooks controlling these both lines. Knight takes e5, queen g3, f6, rook d6, bishop c8 protecting the pawn on e6, rook d1, knight d5, bishop f4, rook b8, bishop takes e5, f takes e5, queen takes e5. A little trap by Naroditsky, queen d2. Well, you can't take on d2 because you will get checkmated. That's why. But instead, in this position, Caruana played rook d8 check, king f7. Here comes bishop g8 check, king g6, queen e4 check, king f6, queen f3 check, and black resigned. Well, whatever you play, for example, queen f4, then simply rook f8 check, and white is winning. A great game by Fabiano Caruana. Your comments please, and thanks for watching. Good luck.